You tell me.
Hans, can you define in basic terms how fatigue relates to workload?
So it's a difficult question because we don't really have the science down for that just completely yet. We're working on that. One of the studies that, or actually the only study available right now that we have, is a study that I did a couple of years ago at the University of Pennsylvania with David Dinges at the time. That really took this question on for the first time. And we did a study where we increased the workload, but keeping everything else the same, and basically looked at what does that do to your levels of fatigue under normal circumstances, but also when you're sleep deprived, when you're losing sleep. Is there an additional effect of workload that is above and beyond what you would normally experience when you're also sleep deprived? And the only data we have right now indicate that the effect of workload and the effect of sleep loss do somehow interact, in the sense that you get more tired more quickly when you're also sleep deprived from additional workload. But that effect at the same time is relatively small. So it's noticeable, and we can measure it in the lab, but it's relatively speaking compared to other factors, such as how long have you been awake in the first place and what time of day it is. These effects are small. We do believe that they accumulate. So there is reason to believe that if you fly multiple segments, that you build up some of an additional fatigue from that. But I think at the same time, the evidence right now is that effect is relatively small compared to other factors that are already taken into account in the aviation environment as well, which is time of day when you start your duty period and how long is the duty period. So in that sense, we know the basic principles, but we don't really know to what extent these effects are really critically important. And the evidence we have right now is that they matter, but they matter relatively small in compared to other factors we're already taking into account. And that's the part that getting that exactly right, getting these numbers exactly right, that's what we have been doing trying to do in phase one of the study we've done, in trying to produce a mathematical model that will actually predict that. And in phase two then, and I know that I'm stepping ahead a little bit in your questions here, but in phase two, we'll try to figure out if we got this right by doing an actual experiment to prove that.
Good. Are there ways to avoid and mitigate fatigue?
Yes, there are, absolutely. And I think we all know some of the ways we can do that just right there. Caffeine, of course, comes to mind, and it's an excellent way of mitigating fatigue. It has its limits. You can only do so much of it. But we all do it, and it works well, and it has relatively little side effects, so it's a great way to start. But ultimately, what you want to do to mitigate fatigue is to plan your schedules properly so that you have sufficient amount of rest and sufficient availability of rest facilities, for instance. And this is an issue that we see across aviation, where people are starting to think about how can you do that. Not so much relevant to the regional airlines, but to some of the other airlines, of course, is the ultra long range operations, a good example, where we start to realize much more acutely now that in-flight napping is the way to go, because you have all this time where you can actually take a nap and get that sleep in so that you can reduce the fatigue so that you're ready for the landing. And right now, in current regulations, that is in the United States at least is not allowed, and that I think is a missed opportunity. So we know from the signs of fatigue that planning, careful planning, and using good opportunities for sleep and rest is really the best way to go if you can make it work. If that doesn't work, then there are all kinds of other things you can do, and we can go on about this at length, but I think the thing that comes to mind for everybody, caffeine, is a really good way to go as a start.
Okay. How can airlines benefit from the research and best practices that the study is identifying?
I'd like to take this a little bit broader, I think, in the sense that all the airlines are working on these issues. Everybody is aware in the industry that fatigue is an issue that needs to be mitigated, and I think there's a lot of effort going on in doing that. And I think in that sense, the aviation industry is really at the leading edge of what's going on throughout transportation and throughout industry, really doing some of the cutting edge work here, taking steps that go beyond what other people have done and leading the way in getting the science right. So if you ask what can airlines how can aviation benefit? I think it's much broader than that. Everybody benefits. All the industries that have 24/7 operations benefit for us getting the science right, so that we can then subsequently inform people how to produce schedules the best way that are most fatigue friendly, and how to use countermeasures. And that in our 24/7 economy is on everybody's minds. And it used to be that the idea was that if you had to mitigate fatigue, that would be at the cost of your operational integrity, that you would lose productivity, or you would lose money, or you would lose the ability to run your operations. And we've realized now that if we use the quantitative science of fatigue, the models that we have produced to predict it, that we can actually produce schedules that are still operationally still have operational integrity, that are still productive and cost effective, and at the same time make the whole operation more fatigue friendly. So it's a win-win situation. And I think that's the breakthrough that we've seen over the last couple of years, that everybody can benefit. Safety and productivity and cost effectiveness and serving the public all can go hand in hand. And it's not antagonistic. It's not something that one has to give for the other. And I think that's the major breakthrough that we've seen, that we're getting to that point now where everything can be better.